And what I stated about the things I own, they didn't matter at that point. I was very unhappy. I didn't really like my job. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to turn into a vampire. Simon Cowell, the sharp-tongued music mogul who has launched worldwide superstars and ruled the largest stages in the world, is now at the core of devastating news that has left fans in disbelief. Once the driving force behind some of the most famous talent shows on TV, Simon's most recent personal revelation is not only heartbreaking, but also very human. As more information comes out, people are wondering about his future, his health, and what this means for the legacy he's built. So what really happened to Simon Cowell? The truth is more emotional than everyone thought it would be. The guy who wore the red glasses. Simon Cowell had a huge name in TV for many years. He was recognized all across the world as the no-nonsense judge who never held back the truth. He had a sharp tongue and an even sharper look. Cowell's presence drew attention, whether it was on Britain's Got Talent, The X Factor, America's Got Talent, or American Idol. He didn't only pick winners. He built an empire on honesty, showmanship, and a lot of self-assurance. He sculpted careers and made stars. His voice was strong, his criticisms were harsh, and his answers were indelible, from famous eye rolls to that unmistakable smirk. Many people liked him, many feared him, but everyone paid attention. Cowell was more than just a judge for more than 20 years. He was the best at judging talent, and in an industry that often doesn't tell the truth, he was the last word. But suddenly things started to shift. At first it was hard to see. A softer voice, a slower pace, and a calmer attitude. The man, who used to be known for his forceful, almost scary presence, seemed less so. And then the glasses with the red tint appeared. Not just once, but all the time. People all throughout the world started to worry about Simon. Why did things change? What was behind those dark glasses? It turns out that behind the stage lights and the polished appearance, Simon Cowell was battling a personal conflict that few people knew about. Cowell was fighting a terrible neurological condition in a world far apart from the glitz and glamour of TV sets and loud crowds. It wasn't just a fight with the doctors, it was deeply human, emotional, and mental. It not only made it hard for him to act on television, but it also shook the very foundation of who he was, which he had worked hard to create over the years. It was astonishing and distressing to see a man who had always seemed impenetrable be so weak. People are now interested in this secret part of Cowell's life, not because of the drama of celebrity gossip, but because of how real it is. The once strong media mogul is now dealing with pain, weakness, and doubt. And yet, even as his public image changed, one thing was certain: Simon Cowell is still in the ring. His crimson glasses, which used to be only a fashion statement, are now a sign of survival, not style. They show not only a physical need, but also a quiet defiance, a manner of face the world even while there is a storm inside. There is strength in his stillness. There is strength in the way he moves more slowly, and his fight is a narrative that needs to be told, not of failure, but of change. This is no longer just a story about a man who built TV empires and found talent. This is the narrative of a guy who learns to live with weakness, deal with fame while dealing with a sickness that no one can see, and teach the world that even the strongest voices need to take a break, recover, and change. And in that, Simon Cowell might be showing off his best quality yet. What led him to this state? Let's look more closely at the accident that changed everything. A disaster that happened out of the blue. Simon has been acting strange for a long time. Chronic migraines and weird neurological symptoms had been slowly taking over his life, little indicators that something was wrong. But nothing, not even Simon or anybody who knew him, could have prepared them for the event that changed his life in August 2020. He had planned for it to be a peaceful, quiet day at his gorgeous Malibu home. No meetings, no deadlines, just a break from his normally stressful life. Simon chose to test out a sleek new electric trail bike that day. It was a last-minute choice, something you do for fun. But in just a few seconds, that fun journey transformed into a nightmare. Something went very wrong as he was riding the strong machine. Simon couldn't handle it anymore. The bike sped forward without warning, and before he could do anything, he was flung to the ground hard. The crash was terrible. He broke several bones in his back, and the pain was immediate and unbearable. He couldn't move right. He couldn't feel some portions of his body the way he used to. During those scary times, the unthinkable became a genuine possibility. He might never be able to walk again. Paramedics got there quickly, and Simon had to have emergency surgery at the hospital. Surgeons had to put metal rods and screws in his spine to keep it from falling apart. It was a very risky and demanding operation. The news about the catastrophe circulated immediately. People who liked it were startled. People who work in the entertainment industry were shocked. How could this happen to Simon, a man who was known for being strong, confident, and in charge? There was a deeper, more agonizing narrative behind the headlines and social media posts. The fight started when they survived the accident. The true battle happened in the weeks and months that came after. Simon had to go through a long and hard recuperation process. It hurt every time he moved. Things that used to be easy were now hard problems to solve. He had to learn how to move again and trust his body again. The emotional cost was just as high. He felt weak, unsure, and shocked to his core. This wasn't merely a hurt body. It was a momentous moment for a man who had based his career and personality on always being in charge. He suddenly lost control in a stunning way. The confident walk, the strong voice, and the strong presence were suddenly gone, and in their stead were slower movements and careful steps. Others could see it. Simon could tell that something had changed. But out of the trouble, something strong began to show up. The accident took away the idea of Simon as just a smart businessman or a brave TV star. It showed a man dealing with one of the hardest things in life. Not in front of cameras, but behind closed doors, in hospital rooms, and during treatment sessions when no one else was there. And out of that fight grew something even stronger: resilience. He didn't stop trying. He kept going through the torture every day. He slowly got stronger. He slowly got his balance back, both physically and emotionally. The accident that almost took everything away changed everything. It reminded him and everyone else watching that even the strongest individuals may fail, but how they rise is what really makes them who they are. Simon's story was more than just a headline. It became a strong reminder of how fragile humans are and how strong determination may be to go through hard times and get up again. Simon Cowell appears to have fully recovered from the accident, but he is now dealing with another serious illness. Let's find out how he has been dealing with a bad migraine, the opponent that doesn't talk. It was evident that Simon was going through a tough time in his life when the accident happened, but the injuries he could see were scary, and what happened next really scared him up. A storm that was calmer and more obvious than most people could have imagined. Simon made a rare and daring confession in public in 2024. He had been having very bad migraines that kept coming back. These weren't just normal headaches that you could sleep off or take a medication for. These were violent and unpredictable neurological attacks, the sort that took over his senses, made him dizzy, obscured his vision, and left him absolutely helpless, even in front of a live audience. These incidents were terrible for Simon, who had based his career on being able to think quickly, see things clearly, and be on TV all the time. His mind had always been his best quality, but now it was under attack. The studio's brilliant, piercing lights, which had formerly made him feel confident, now turned against him. He could feel the pressure growing behind his eyelids, like a quiet warning, even before the pain hit. To deal with that, he started wearing spectacles with a red tint. To the people who saw them, they could have looked like a fashion statement, but really they were a lifeline. These lenses were made to block out the strong blue light that regularly gave him migraines. They didn't fix the problem, but they did help him feel better for a while so he could get things done. People who were close to Simon started to see how much it was hurting him. In the middle of a conversation, he would suddenly stop talking, his eyes would lose focus, and his face would go blank. It was evident that the anguish had come back with full intensity. He would sometimes quietly leave the set since he had to deal with a circumstance that doesn't always follow the rules. The fight was considerably worse behind the scenes. The drugs helped with the pain, but they also had bad side effects that made him tired and low on energy, which was very different from the lively guy he used to be. He attempted many kinds of treatments and therapies, some of which gave him hope and others that made him angry. But maybe the hardest part of all was not knowing what would happen. The migraines could hit at any time without notice. That uncertainty made him afraid every time he performed. Simon kept coming back though. He stayed there, charming and professional, even though the pain was raging inside him. But it came at a price that only a few people really comprehended. The spectacles were more than just a tool. They became a silent statement of strength, a sign that he was fighting a struggle that not everyone could see. Simon's story is a strong reminder that some of the hardest battles are the ones that no one sees. People who watched him on TV thought he was calm, but only a handful knew what it took for him to get there. The migraines may not have left any outward scars, but they changed how he worked, how he dealt with things, and how he lived. Simon kept getting up even though he was in pain, didn't know what to do, and was scared. That quiet strength says a lot. Let's look at the problems he has to deal with as he comes back into the public eye. The cost of staying strong. Simon wouldn't just quietly go away, even if his body was fighting a furious internal battle. Fame, lights, and cameras used to be a big part of his existence. They weren't only things he used for work. They were parts of who he was. So when things got tough, Simon didn't give up. He finally came back to the performances that made him famous after a long break in 2021. The crowd, which was loyal and excited, welcomed him back with loud applause and cheers. But something was different. The Simon people recalled, full of fire, sharp tongues, and confidence, but they appeared a little less bright. There was a shade over his previously brilliant eyes. That smirk that used to always be there only showed up in flashes. His quick comebacks and funny comments, the ones that used to hit like lightning, were slower now and sometimes unsure. It was like he had to draw each statement out of a murky part of his head. He was on stage, but he moved differently, more carefully and stiffly. His eyes constantly wandered, and his focus was far away. This wasn't simply about getting older. It was something deeper, something weighty that couldn't be seen, and something that hurt. What fans didn't know was that Simon was carrying a heavy burden that most people couldn't even understand, even though he looked good and smiled for the camera. He wasn't simply funny every time he was on screen. He was also going through a lot of agony. His daily life had become a full-time battle with severe pain. Every day was a fine line between being able to go on and being too tired. Simon used a number of different treatments and experimental remedies to deal with the pain. Some of them sounded like they came from a science fiction book: nerve blocks to stop the pain, Botox to relax the muscles in his face and neck, and even time in hyperbaric oxygen chambers to give his body a fresh start. There was no certainty that these would work. They were tiring, costly, and often draining. Then there were hours of physical therapy, stretching and manipulating muscles that didn't work the same way they used to. Even his daily routines were tight and unyielding. He had to drink water all the time to stay hydrated. He stuck to strict sleep regimens to keep from getting migraines. He stayed away from places, scents, and meals that could set off a flare-up. It was like traveling through a field of hidden landmines, where one incorrect step could send him back to days of anguish. But he kept coming back. It wasn't simply about doing his job every time Simon stepped onto a set or sat in front of a camera. It was his own statement: "I'm still here. I'm not done yet." Every smile, even if it was fake. Every cue that was late, even if it was slow. They all recounted a story about someone who didn't want to give up. He wasn't just putting on shows anymore. He was battling to stay alive and cling on to the part of himself that used to light up the stage. The costume, the makeup, and the lighting were all that most people saw. They didn't perceive the hurt that was underneath it all. The hazy mind, the sore body, and the times of doubt. But Simon kept going. It wasn't because he was as powerful as before. It was because he was stronger in a different way. This wasn't merely a return of a famous person. It was something more human and deeper. It was a simple story about being brave, about getting up when you want to lie down, and about smiling even when it hurts. Simon coming back was more than just a show. It became proof that a soul won't give up. In the middle of being weak, Simon Cowell seemed to be looking for strength. Let's look more closely at the details of his silent battles as he moves forward. The person beneath the mask. Most people don't know that Simon Cowell's life story is far more interesting and profound than they think. People know him as the gruff, no-nonsense judge on popular TV shows. The man who gives crisp, often brutal reviews with a certainty that seems unassailable. Simon made a name for himself as someone who was strong and unstoppable, who never backed down and always said what he thought. But there is a lot more complicated and human narrative behind that confident look. Simon hasn't always had it easy in life. He has had to deal with some very hard things that not many people know about, away from the bright lights, cameras, and acclaim. He had to deal with something that a lot of people find hard to understand, that even the strongest people may feel weak and vulnerable when they are sick or hurt. Simon shows that real strength isn't about being tough or faultless all the time. Being bold enough to admit when you're having a hard time, face your flaws head on, and keep going despite them is what real courage is all about. Simon has a softer side that only his partner Lauren Silverman, his young son Eric, and a few close friends have seen. The public doesn't see this side of him very often. Simon is more honest when he's not on stage and in the spotlight. He shows that he is a man who feels deeply and sometimes quietly fights his worries and doubts. When the emotional suffering gets too much for him to handle, he turns to the love and support of the people closest to him. This private Simon is nothing like the tough, brave person you see on TV. He is a person who is both very weak and very strong. His choice to wear red-tinted glasses is one of the most interesting signs of Simon's covert fights. At first, a lot of people felt these spectacles were just a way for him to stand out from the other famous people. But over time, those spectacles have come to signify a lot more than just style. They serve as a constant reminder of the personal problems he deals with every day. Behind the celebrity, prosperity, and power comes a modest narrative of agony, determination, and bravery that most people don't see. The red-tinted lenses protect Simon as he keeps going forward, even if he has a lot of problems. There is yet more to Simon Cowell's story. His fight is still going on, and it shows how strong he is in the face of problems that test his physical, emotional, and mental health. We can learn a lot from his journey. Being perfect or never revealing vulnerability is not what makes you strong. Instead, it's about acknowledging our problems, accepting them, and using them to grow and become stronger. Simon lived a life that makes us all rethink what it means to be strong. It reminds us that even the strongest and most self-assured people have to fight their own demons, which takes a lot of courage. Simon's capacity to keep going and battling even when things get rough shows us that real courage comes from being honest and forthright about the problems in life.
The biography of Simon Cowell makes us think about what fame and popularity really mean. It reminds us that every famous person is a person with worries, pains, hopes, and dreams. Simon's journey teaches us to be nicer to ourselves and to others by showing us that sometimes the best thing we can do is be open, ask for help, and keep going no matter how hard things become. Let's take a quick look at Simon Cowell's rise to fame in music and on TV. Simon Cowell's path via TV and music. Simon Cowell, who was born on October 7, 1959, is a name that is nearly always associated with talent shows and harsh criticism. Cowell is a British businessman, media personality, and record producer. He is known all over the world for finding and developing fresh musical talent. Cowell has developed an entertainment empire that spans continents with his recognizable voice, straight-faced critiques, and no-nonsense attitude. Cowell was a record producer, talent scout, and music consultant in the 1980s and 1990s. He was well known in the British music scene at the time. But it wasn't until 2001 that he really became famous. He got famous that year as a judge on Pop Idol, a British TV talent show. Cowell and Simon Fuller pitched the show to ITV, and it became a hit. Its success revolutionized the way reality TV was made. Cowell made two huge hits on TV around the world, The X Factor in 2004 and Got Talent in 2006. Both franchises became popular around the world, with versions airing in dozens of countries. Cowell was a well-known face on several other popular TV shows in addition to being a judge on Pop Idol. He was a judge on The X Factor UK from 2004 to 2010, then again from 2014 to 2018. He has also been a main judge on Britain's Got Talent since it started in 2007. He was on American Idol from 2002 to 2010, then on The X Factor US from 2011 to 2013, and finally on America's Got Talent since 2016. His frank, brutally honest critique, which was sometimes funny and other times severe, became his signature and kept people watching. Cowell has had a big impact on the music business outside of TV. He started S Records in 2002, which eventually became Psycho Music, and then in 2005, he started Psycho Entertainment. He signed and marketed chart-topping musicians like Leona Lewis, Susan Boyle, Little Mix, James Arthur, and One Direction through these businesses. These performers helped create current pop music. He also showed the globe great groups like Pretty Much, Fifth Harmony, CNCO, and Westlife. People have observed Cowell's impact. Time magazine named him one of the 100 most powerful people in the world in 2004, and again in 2010. In 2006, British viewers put him 28th on ITV's list of the 50 greatest stars on TV. In 2008, the Daily Telegraph went even further and named him the 6th most prominent person in British culture. He has won many awards for his work in entertainment. In 2008 and 2010, he won the Special Recognition Award at the National Television Awards. BAFTA, the British Academy of Film and Television Arts, granted him a special award for changing the industry and finding fresh talent. In 2018, he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that will last forever. Simon Cowell's career has been a frenzy of new ideas, taking risks and indisputable success, from music magnate to TV legend. Cowell is still shaping the future of entertainment, one talent show at a time, whether he's making stars or making news. What do you think of Simon Cowell's problems when he wears red glasses? Please leave your opinions in the comments below. Remember liking and subscription as well.